بين في موضع النكال والنقمة، وأعظم المتجبرين في موضع الكبرياء والعظمة. اللهم أذنت لي في دعائك ومسألتك، فاسمع يا سميع مدحتي، وأجب يا رحيم دعوتي، وأقل يا غفور عثرتي. فكم يا إلهي من كربة قد فرجتها، وهموم قد كشفتها، وعثرة قد أقلتها، ورحمة قد نشرتها، وحلقة بلاء قد فككتها. الحمد لله الذي لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، ولم يكن له شريك في الملك، ولم يكن له ولي من الذل، وكبره تكبيرا. الحمد لله بجميع محامده كلها، على جميع نعمه كلها. الحمد لله الذي لا مضاد له في ملكه، ولا منازع له في أمره. الحمد لله الذي لا شريك له في خلقه، ولا شبيه له في عظمته. الحمد لله الفاشي في الخلق أمره وحمده، الظاهر بالكرم مجده، الباسط بالجود يده، الذي لا تنقص خزائنه، ولا تزيده كثرة العطاء إلا جودا وكرما. إنه هو العزيز الوهاب. اللهم إني أسألك قليلا من كثير، مع حاجة بي إليه عظيمة، وغناك عنه قديم، وهو عندي كثير، وهو عليك سهل يسير. اللهم إن عفوك عن ذنبي، وتجاوزك عن خطيئتي، وصفحك عن ظلمي، وسترك على قبيح عملي، وحلمك عن كثير جرمي، عندما كان من خطئي وعمدي، أطمعني في أن أسألك ما لا أستوجبه منك، الذي رزقتني من رحمتك، وأريتني من قدرتك، وعرفتني من إجابتك، فصرت أدعوك آمنا وأسألك مستأنسا، لا خائفا ولا وجلا، مدلا عليك فيما قصدت فيه إليك، فإن أبطأ عني عتبت بجهلي عليك. ولعل الذي أبطأ عني هو خير لي لعلمك بعاقبة الأمور، فلم أر مولى كريما أصبر على عبد لئيم منك علي يا رب. إنك تدعوني فأولي عنك، وتتحبب إلي فأتبغض إليك، وتتودد إلي فلا أقبل منك. كأن لي التطول عليك، فلم يمنعك ذلك من الرحمة لي والإحسان إلي، والتفضل علي بجودك وكرمك. فارحم عبدك الجاهل، وجد عليه بفضل إحسانك، إنك جواد كريم. الحمد لله مالك الملك مجري الفلك، مسخر الرياح فالق الإصباح، ديان الدين رب العالمين. الحمد لله على حلمه بعد علمه، والحمد لله على عفوه بعد قدرته، والحمد لله على طول أناته في غضبه، وهو قادر على ما يريد. الحمد لله خالق الخلق باسط الرزق، فالق الإصباح ذي الجلال والإكرام والفضل والإنعام، الذي بعد فلا يرى، وقرب فشهد النجوى، تبارك وتعالى. الحمد لله الذي ليس له منازع يعادله، ولا شبيه يشاكله، ولا ظهير يعاضده. قهر بعزته الأعزاء، وتواضع لعظمته العظماء، فبلغ بقدرته ما يشاء. الحمد لله الذي يجيبني حين أناديه ويستر علي كل عورة وأنا أعصيه، ويعظم النعمة علي فلا أجازيه. فكم من موهبة هنيئة قد أعطاني، وعظيمة مخوفة قد كفاني، وبهجة مونقة قد أراني. فأثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا. الحمد لله الذي لا يهتك حجابه، ولا يغلق بابه، ولا يرد سائله، ولا يخيب آمله. الحمد لله الذي يؤمن الخائفين، وينجي الصالحين، ويرفع المستضعفين، ويضع المستكبرين، ويهلك ملوكا ويستخلف آخرين. والحمد لله قاصم الجبارين، مبير الظالمين، مدرك الهاربين، نكال الظالمين، صريخ المستصرخين، موضع حاجات الطالبين، معتمد المؤمنين. الحمد لله الذي من خشيته ترعد السماء وسكانها، وترجف الأرض وعمارها، وتموج البحار ومن يسبح في غمراتها. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. الحمد لله الذي يخلق ولم يخلق، ويرزق ولا يرزق، ويطعم ولا يطعم، ويميت الأحياء ويحيي الموتى، وهو حي لا يموت، بيده الخير وهو على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وأمينك وصفيك وحبيبك وخيرتك من خلقك، وحافظ سرك ومبلغ رسالاتك، أفضل وأحسن وأجمل وأكمل، وأزكى وأنمى وأطيب وأطهر، وأسنى وأكثر ما صليت وباركت وترحمت وتحننت وسلمت على أحد من عبادك وأنبيائك ورسلك وصفوتك وأهل الكرامة عليك من خلقك. اللهم وصل على علي أمير المؤمنين، ووصي رسول رب العالمين، عبدك ووليك وأخي رسولك، وحجتك على خلقك، وآيتك الكبرى والنبأ العظيم. وصل على الصديقة الطاهرة فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، وصل على سبطي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة. وصل على أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين، ومحمد بن علي، وجعفر بن محمد، وموسى بن جعفر، وعلي بن موسى، ومحمد بن علي، وعلي بن محمد، والحسن بن علي، والخلف الهادي المهدي، حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك، صلاة كثيرة دائمة. اللهم وصل على ولي أمرك القائم المؤمل والعدل المنتظر، وحفه بملائكتك المقربين، وأيده بروح القدس يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعله الداعي إلى كتابك والقائم بدينك، استخلفه في الأرض كما استخلفت الذين من قبله، مكن له دينه الذي ارتضيته له، أبدله من بعد خوفه أمنا، يعبدك لا يشرك بك شيئا. اللهم أعزه وأعزز به، وانصره وانتصر به، وانصره نصرا عزيزا، وافتح له فتحا يسيرا، واجعل له من لدنك سلطانا نصيرا. اللهم أظهر به دينك وسنة نبيك، حتى لا يستخفي بشيء من الحق مخافة أحد من الخلق. اللهم إنا نرغب إليك في دولة كريمة تعز بها الإسلام وأهله، وتذل بها النفاق وأهله، وتجعلنا فيها من الدعاة إلى طاعتك والقادة إلى سبيلك، وترزقنا بها كرامة الدنيا والآخرة. اللهم ما عرفتنا من الحق فحملناه، وما قصرنا عنه فبلغناه. اللهم المم به شعثنا، واشعب به صدعنا، وارتق به فتقنا، وكثر به قلتنا، وأعزز به ذلتنا، وأغني به عائلنا، واقضي به عن مغرمنا، واجبر به فقرنا، وسد به خلتنا، ويسر به عسرنا، وبيض به وجوهنا، وفك به أسرنا، وأنجح به طلبتنا، وأنجز به مواعيدنا، واستجب به دعوتنا، وأعطنا به سؤلنا، وبلغنا به من الدنيا والآخرة آمالنا، وأعطنا به فوق رغبتنا يا خير المسؤولين وأوسع المعطين. اشف به صدورنا، وأذهب به غيظ قلوبنا، واهدنا به لما اختلف فيه من الحق بإذنك، إنك تهدي من تشاء إلى صراط مستقيم. وانصرنا به على عدوك وعدونا إله الحق، آمين. اللهم إنا نشكو إليك فقد نبينا صلواتك عليه وآله، وغيبة ولينا، وكثرة عدونا، وقلة عددنا، وشدة الفتن بنا، وتظاهر الزمان علينا. فصل على محمد وآله، وأعنا على ذلك بفتح منك تعجله، وبضر تكشفه، ونصر تعزه، وسلطان حق تظهره، ورحمة منك تجللناها، وعافية منك تلبسناها، برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على نبينا وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله، السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله، السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله، السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله، السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله، السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام، السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى المرتضى، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء، السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة، وآتيت الزكاة، وأمرت بالمعروف، ونهيت عن المنكر، وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك، ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك، ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأصلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها، ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرضي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والعروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياؤه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن، بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم، وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. بأبي أنت وأمي يا ابن رسول الله، بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل السماوات والأرض، فلعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتهيأت لقتالك. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أسأل الله بالشأن الذي لك عنده وبالمحل الذي لك لديه أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على
You guys ready? You start? Okay. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Okay. So our topic was identity. We said identity, it's our belief system. The first one we wanted to work on was Tawheed. So we talked about what Tawheed means and how we prove that Allah is one. We spent a little time talking about tarbiyah as well and how that affects our idea about identity and Tawheed, about the different stages and how that can affect us growing up, maybe disconnect from society. Then the other day we started talking about adl and justice. And we said, number one, just knowing about Tawheed, just knowing that God is there, is not always enough for us to be better Muslims, to stay away from ma'asiyah and sin. So the first thing we talked about is, okay, we have to be able to figure out if God is actually just or not. Is he good or not? So our first thing was, well, we have to go through the meaning. We need to know what justice means in the first place. Because as we discussed yesterday, everybody has their own definition, right? When you talk about even superheroes, Batman has his definition, Superman has his, the Punisher has his. So even in in fiction, they have different definitions. So for us, we were talking about it a little bit yesterday. Some people said equality, some people said equity, some people said what you deserve, right? We had different answers. So we want to try to figure this out today. Once we figure out a decent meaning, then we can try to apply it to, as the majority of you want to do that, right? Is that a good definition of justice, you think? Let me pass the mic to you.
I don't think that just because the majority raise their hand because they want one type of food, we should only get one type of food. Who knows, maybe, just for the sake of the argument, they're allergic to pizza. The rest of them that didn't have their hands up. So we're obligated to accompany their want of not wanting pizza.
Yeah. What else?
Since the goal is to make most people happy and least amount of people sad, could have gotten pizza and whatever the other two people wanted. So that means everyone got what they wanted.
Let's say we can't do that. Let's say it's impossible because we have a limited amount of funds, right? Obviously, every center has a limited amount of funds. They can't get everything all the time. And what if every single person wanted something different? It's not practical, right? Sometimes you're lucky and maybe the majority do want the same thing, or 50-something% want the same thing. But what if every single person's like, well, I mean, even imagine, right? The other day they got cheese and they got olives. What if somebody's like, look, I don't like olive pizza, I don't like cheese pizza, I want whatever, I only want like peppers on it. And somebody else is like, well, I don't like that kind of pizza anyway, I want this kind. Or I don't even like it from Domino's, I want it from Papa John's or Pizza Hut, right? Like, everybody can have all these different ideas. So then sometimes we get the majority, sometimes we don't. What we're trying to figure out is that a good definition for justice? Like, just because we take care of 51% of people in a group, does that make it just? Or does it make it fair? Yeah, but what you said makes sense if you can do that, but usually you can't, right? Anybody else have any other thoughts? No? Okay. So the pizza example, food example, it's a silly one or simple one. Let's take it to be a bit more complex. What if in a country, like some countries have, they say that they decide they want to ban the hijab in public. And the majority of people, they vote, it's a democracy, so they come out and they vote and they say, no, hijab is banned. Is that justice? But the majority did it, right? So it's democracy. What's wrong with that? Yeah, go ahead. I mean, if it's green, it should be on.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So if it's not really justice because you're neglecting a whole group of people and going against their own beliefs, which which goes against what they practice and believe. So it's not really justice against. It's not really justice for them. Because you're going against them. It's not serving justice to everybody. Because just because the majority voted, it doesn't mean it's good and just. Because the majority vote could be a negative result towards somebody.
Can you think of any other examples, right now or even in history, where the majority wanted something And now when we look back at it, like clearly that was unjust. Like they shouldn't have done that, even though the majority wanted it. If you can't think, anybody else want to help out, you can jump in too. Think about stuff that we end up learning in public school about history. What are things that societies have been doing for a long time, or certain countries have been doing for a long time, and they thought it was fine, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we changed our mind, it's not just anymore. Yeah, you can pass the mic to them. Either of these guys. Communism? Is it? Oh, sorry. I think somebody turned it off. Yeah. Or is the battery low? Yeah.
And then they weren't communists anymore because they didn't think it was good.
Yeah. So the people wanted it, and then they're like, this is the right thing. And then all of a sudden now they're like this is terrible, we don't want it anymore, and now it became unjust. Can that happen with any idea? Where the majority of people are like, yeah, this is the best thing. You can't have justice just changing like back and forth like that. It doesn't make sense, right? Obviously, other examples would be the majority for centuries thought the way that these guys abused like black people was right. Like, yeah, it's fine. They're inhuman. They're inferior. Turned it into a majority, right? So obviously, majority of people, the Nazi regime, right? The majority of people voted for Hitler. What was a democratic vote that they put Hitler in power in Germany, right? And have you guys studied World War II yet or no? Okay. So a lot of countries, they put Vladimir in power. Now do you think all these Zionist presidents get elected too? It's democracy, right? The majority of people oppress Palestinians in Israel, in the Zionist occupied lands. So they want to do that. That's the majority, right? That's democracy, and that's what it's leading to. So being the majority or having democratic votes about something doesn't always mean that it's going to be just. All right, so we can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. Now some people say, fine, we're not talking about making people happy, but what is just is people. When people obey laws, that's what's actually just. If you disobey a law, that's unfair and that's unjust. You shouldn't be oppressing people. You have something to say, huh?
It's not good because what if the laws are not fair? Corrupt laws like the slavery one, or like the Fugitive Slave Act.
Yeah. Same thing applies basically like before, right? Okay, whether it's a majority made the law or a minority, even really intelligent people, doesn't matter who made it. A law by itself doesn't automatically mean that's just, right? And you gave the example of the civil rights movement where obviously people were obeying U.S. law or state law by sitting on parts of the bus or whatever, or going to areas that they shouldn't have been going, but everybody else thought it was fine. It was only that thought these, it was okay to disobey these laws. But they knew it was unjust, and that's why they went against the law. So even laws by themselves don't automatically have to be right and have to be just, okay? We know that. That doesn't make sense. Anybody else have any other thoughts about this? Okay. You have maybe one or two more definitions? Yeah, I think one more. Okay. Okay, forget making people happy. Forget laws. We have to do what is morally right. What is morally right. That's what's just. If you do what's morally right and you stay away from what's morally wrong, that's how does that work? You think that's a good definition? Jassim saying, who can decide what is moral and not? Hasan, right? The same thing can apply any of these seats. Everybody's just using different words, but in the end, it's all the same thing. Some people right now, right? The majority of people, they get to decide. People think that all of you decided that it's right, that all of a sudden it's morally good or bad. Like that's not a good definition. He said, look, same thing over here too. A bunch of people can be wrong about something. So these definitions are not really helping us out. Now, we could agree in principle, so yeah. Moral. Again, one day slavery is fine, the next day it's not. One day women don't get to vote, the next day they do get to vote. One day, I don't want to give different examples, but you know what I mean, right? Anything in terms of morality, if people are in charge, that can change any single day at any single time. Most of you guys are too young to know, but for those of us who, let's say, were born in the 80s and even before that, We've seen so many different things change over and over again. And we look at society right now, and it's really crazy. Like, think about the stuff that comes in movies, in music, on the radio, on TV, like profanity, vulgarity, curse words, and things like that. So when I was growing up, none of that stuff was allowed on TV. Everything was cut out from the radio. Right? You couldn't find it anywhere. And in movies, they were very, very strict about, G, PG, PG-13, rated R, all that stuff. So you could go listen to the radio, watch TV, and everything would be family friendly. Nowadays, even you can watch in the middle of the day, and there's really disgusting stuff that, TV or comes on the radio. Listen to them. So they've changed what they decide is okay for people to hear. And even now, sometimes, I remember I was having a conversation with somebody, and we're talking about what is morally good, what is morally right in society. And I gave the example. I said, what about a little kid if they were cursing, like a 5 or 6-year-old? Cursing, don't curse. If you curse, don't do it around little kids because we don't want them to learn that. And now people have shifted, said, no, it's okay. Let them see whatever they want. Let them hear anything. Like, this is really, really bad. And most of you guys know, because if you guys are on social media and stuff, the stuff that's on there, it can get really disgusting, right? Really nasty stuff is on there. And anybody who has a phone, the way that works, something disgusting will come up no matter what you watch. Usually the way the algorithms are designed by the social media companies is after 1 or 2, let's say, swipes or likes or whatever, it'll automatically give you something just a little bit outside of what you like. Try to test you to see how much can we push you. Because they don't want you just to watch the same stuff over and over again. They want you to increase the amount of content that you're absorbing and that you like. If you can like more and more stuff, then, because at the end of the day, they just want you to buy stuff. Right? There's advertising. That's what they treat human beings like. So they're trying to shift your idea. The more stuff that you're okay with doing that you think is morally right, then the more money you'll spend. Because they're like, this is not a big deal anymore. I can go and buy this or do that. So we have to be very careful of that stuff as well. So this is not going to work either. But it comes back to the same question, is who, right? Who gets to decide it at the end of the day? What do you guys think? Where are we going to get our definition of justice then? Yeah, Hasan.
Allah.
That's the good Muslim boy answer, very good. So what does that mean? How are we going to get it from Allah?
Quran.
Okay, where does he give a definition in the Quran?
What?
Does Allah give a definition of justice in the Quran? That you know of, at least? No? Let's see if Aziz knows.
A lot of these laws, they're man-made, so they're subject to error. Saying what's morally right, it's own perspective of what is right. So again, if we were to take it from the Quran, now I don't know, but if I were to give a general answer, it's it was shown in different examples and different stories throughout history that were told in the Quran that we can actually understand ourselves from it, what is morally right from those verses, instead of actually saying one verse that says it and we should just go by that one. It's just it's a set of rules, basically.
We all have these sets of rules as Muslims. We're all supposed to be following the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet, and for us Shia, at least the Ahlul Bayt as well. But obviously, even among Muslims, Muslims seem to have different definitions of justice as well too. If we have the same book, the same Allah and all this, even Shia sometimes have a different definition of justice. Some people, if you ask them, they say, whatever is our heart, we have to go everywhere in front of everybody's faces. Even if it is disrespectful to them, or even it'll make them feel bad, we have to go and say it anyway. And other Shias will say, no, we don't have to go and say everything everywhere all the time. We have to be a little wise about that and say, look, if something's going to bother somebody or hurt their feelings, then maybe you don't say it in public or do that. So even among Shias, there might be a little difference. So proper definition of justice from either the Quran or the Ahlul Bayt. Because just grabbing some of the laws might be a foundation, but is there any sort of clear sort of idea that you and I can use, either that's related to either any of these, which we know it can't be any of these, or even some of the definitions that you guys gave yesterday? Because if you take a little part of everything you guys gave, that's kind of what the Islamic definition is. And I'll give you a clue. The definition is actually in the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam. He's mentioned it in Nahjul Balagha, what the definition of adl is. So, now here comes the Arabic, right? Yeah, I'll use it. Okay, so in one hadith, I'm not going to write out the whole thing. It's going to take forever. I'll just read it and you guys can hear it. That's fine. So in one narration, as part of a khutbah he has in a sermon in Nahj al-Balagha, when he's asked in defining all these concepts, like justice, generosity, and charity, all this, he's making distinctions. So right in one part of it, he says what al-adl is, what is justice. He says, al-adl yad'u al-umur mawadi'aha. It's putting things where they belong. Or as you guys were saying, right? Putting things in the right place. Giving somebody or something exactly what they deserve. Now, if that's our definition, there's two parts that we have to think about here, right? So, it's what we write down, right? So it's putting things in the right place. That's the definition Imam Ali alayhi salam is giving. So, there's two parts of the equation here, right? We've got the things themselves and then the right place. How do we figure out those things? And think about the example we were using with, let's say, giving out pizza to people, right? The thing that we're giving out is pizza itself, and the right place would be to each individual that we have, right? That's their eating. How do you figure out both of these things? Like, how would you actually apply this definition of justice? What do you have to know? What are the prerequisites? If you wanted to be just, what would you have to do? Is the question clear? Should I say it again? You want to try? Yeah. Can you pass it to Amir? Thanks.
It might be like taking into account what like everybody's opinion is, and then like base like building an opinion around that, and then check and like seeing if it's the right thing to do, based on what the people have to say.
Okay. So one part you got right, is so the right place, meaning the actual, so in the pizza example, it's the people. You have to know the people. Now, let's just say, all right, whatever, we'll do a simple example where there's, say, 4 people. So let's say you ask all of them. And you only have, in terms of things, we have, let's say, 8 slices to give out. Each of them say that they all want 4 slices each. Now what are you going to do?
Tell them it's not reasonable.
But that's their opinion. They're saying, no, I want 4 slices. That's what they feel is just. Let me see. Want to help out, Hasan?
Cut the slices in half.
No, they want the slices exactly the same size they're talking about. Don't play games with these people. Think about how we were describing, we talked about it yesterday. It's the same thing. If somebody like me says, look, I want the whole pie to myself, or I want 4 slices, you'd look at me and say, look, you can't eat 4 slices. Right? But how would you know that? If I tell you I can eat, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
It won't be fair to everyone else.
Well, forget everybody else. I want what's fair to me. What about me? I deserve justice too, right? Let's see.
This kind of, it sort of gets into the area of freedom as well. What's fair to you or what you want could actually overstep what I want. So your freedom of eating 4 slices could overstep my freedom of wanting to give everybody else the same amount of slices. So here you and I need to compromise somehow, because what you're doing is not justice or fairness anymore. It's chaos or oppression.
So what I'm asking for is chaos. It's dhulm, it's oppression. So if you're the one dividing up slices, you have to know what is actually dhulm, what is just.
Yes.
But I'm saying I don't agree with your definition. Now what are you going to do?
Your definition is overstepping what's fair for everybody else.
So when you are trying to exact justice,
Okay.
what is required for you? What do you have to know then? In terms of, let's say, all these different individuals.
I have to know the environment, what everybody requires, what each person wants.
Yeah. So basically, every single individual, you have to know everything about, as much information as you can about them, right? If I say that, yeah, I can handle 4 slices, then you'd have to know, look, in reality, I know he can't do that. Little kids, they say the same thing too. Especially in Ramadan, people dump all this food on their plate. Even adults do this, right? They fill up their plate, and then they end up either overeating or tossing stuff out. Even here, if you look, almost every single night, there's hundreds of half-filled water bottles because people take a sip and then leave it alone. And it's very sad that Shia of Ahlul Bayt, those of us who cry when we hear the story of Karbala and the loss of water and the thirst, we're the ones who are also wasting water. It's a very, very shameful thing that Shias do when they waste water like this, right? But people, they don't even understand themselves. So in order to really be a just individual, to be adil, you have to know the actual nature and state of every single person. In order to be just to everybody, you have to know each individual's characteristics and then understand what is just for that person. without violating anybody else's too. So that also means then, the other part is you'd have to know the actual pizza too, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, there we go. You have to understand how pizza works too, right? That's the thing itself. Because maybe dividing pizza versus dividing cake or dividing cookies or dividing water or whatever it is, everything's going to be different. So when Imam Ali is saying justice is putting something or putting things in their rightful place, he said, okay, so I need to know everything I need to know about the thing itself that I'm giving out or that I'm trying to delegate or divide up, and I also need to know who's it going to. Now let's think of different examples too. Think about sports. What sport should we use as an example? Football? Good, I was going to think football too. All right. Who would you, okay, Bakr, no. Yeah, Bakr, right? Okay, Bakr. Yeah, I can pass the mic to him. Who would you say is greatest player of all time?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
He said football. We're in America, man. Come on, speaking. Okay, you want to switch to soccer or do you want to stick with American football? What do you want to do?
Soccer.
Soccer? Okay, so you're saying Ronaldo, right? Greatest player?
Yeah.
What position does he play?
Striker.
Striker. So, let's just say we're thinking about Ronaldo, right? He's like, okay, well, yeah, Ronaldo's actually the thing here in this equation. So we're talking about Ronaldo. Great athlete, great player. How do you think he would do if we put him in as goalie?
Pretty good.
I don't think so. That's not what he's supposed to play, right?
No.
He's supposed to be striker,
Yeah.
right? Sweeper, whatever you want to call it. Even if you kept him on like a defense, maybe midfield, or even as like forward, and he might be okay. But what he's designed to do is kind of be all over the field, right? He has a certain amount of stamina. He has a little bit of everything. If you take him and understand his quality, but you put him in the wrong place, then it's not going to work out. Make sense? The football analogy would have been easier too, I think, right? Like if, who would you guys say is the greatest quarterback? Brady? Come on, man. It's like a recent guy. You could have gone to like Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Joe Namath, like classics, man. Oh my God, the rings. Okay, so okay, let's say we go with Brady then, right? If we go with Brady, what would happen if you throw him as like a defensive lineman or an offensive lineman? He's gonna get killed, right? He doesn't belong there. Right? He's a quarterback, and quarterbacks, yeah, they're obviously much bigger than us. They're much stronger than any of us. They're much faster. They're athletes. But you put them in the wrong position, that's not just. They're going to get murdered, right? They're going to get destroyed. Same way, you take an offensive lineman and you turn him into a wide receiver, like, okay, that's not going to work out either. So everybody has their own characteristics and what they're supposed to play. So we have to know the thing itself. We have to know that quality. What is it good for? And then we can determine where it actually belongs. So remember, we also gave another example. Now we have to go to the other issue about money and then people. Right now, the way it works, let's say one person, Allah decides to give whatever, like their income now is $10,000 a month. But for somebody else, let's say everybody else, their income, Allah only, in terms of their risk or their job, they only get, let's say, $3,000 a month. So somebody, again, what if the person, like back in the pizza example, they're like, look, I want $10,000 a month, or I want $1 million a month. Like, well, that's not fair. Do they have the right to say something like that, based on the way we've been talking about this?
They might not if they don't deserve it, or like they don't have the skills to get the job that gives them $10,000 a month, and they're stuck with that job.
So we're talking about Allah now. He's giving out this risk, right? Allah's Ar-Raziq, Ar-Razaq. He's the one who's giving these things out. So do you and I get to decide how much income we get? Just like I was trying to decide, like, oh, I want 4 slices of pizza. Or if Brady decides, look, I want to try playing offensive lineman. Like, would a coach ever let them make these decisions? No.
No.
Yeah. Anybody else want to jump in?
Equality doesn't mean fairness. So just because somebody else is getting 10,000, I'm getting 3,000, that doesn't mean it's not fair. Obviously we don't really see it through Allah's perspective. We always see it through our own perspective where we want more. Now this really depends on a lot of different factors. But at the end of the day, equality, just to go back to the initial point that I made, equality does not mean fairness.
Hasan, remember we were talking about that yesterday. If I gave everything out equally here, it wouldn't be fair, right? Somebody's going to get, maybe one person gets the right amount they deserve, but everybody else is not going to deserve that amount, whether it's food or money, whatever it is. So we said that equity is different than equality. Equity is pretty much this. It's putting things where they belong. So when Allah is distributing risk or giving out anything, giving out people's height, giving out what sort of religion that they're born into, anything at all that Allah decides for a person when they're born or whatever happens in their life, Allah's the only one who knows the real reality of things, and He knows exactly the real nature of how to put it in the right place. What human being knows that? And anytime any person claims that they know that, we'd say, look, where are you getting your information from? You might think something's unjust, you might think something's unfair, but do you really have the complete picture? Does anybody outside of Allah have the complete picture? No, right? Nobody's got that picture. So you might say, look, it might feel unjust to you, it might feel unfair, but maybe you're not considering all the variables here. Maybe you're not considering other people, right? Because maybe if, let's say, you do get that 10,000, you get that extra money, again, maybe you don't know exactly what to do with it. Look what happens with all these, people who, win the lottery. Obviously, hopefully not Muslims, they shouldn't be playing it, right? But non-Muslims, right? When they play the lottery, they win big. What happens to them? They go bankrupt like within a year usually, or a few years, because they have no idea how to spend money. They don't know how to budget. When people learn those skills, especially people, let's say they grow up in a difficult environment financially, right? They learn how to budget, and they learn how to take care and save properly. They know when to spend, when not to spend, when to save, when they have to take risks. And usually those people, when they start off, let's say very poor or lower middle class, whatever, when they start getting more and more money, they say, look, I'm not going to start turning into somebody who spends all the time, because I already know the value of money. I know what it's supposed to do, and I already know how to control myself as well. And that's why you see people who are, spoiled and born into wealth, usually they end up becoming bankrupt very easily because they don't know what to do with it. On the other side, people who learn the skills, it makes sense for them to do. The same way, Allah, in some hadith, it says, Allah gives out extra risk or more risk, if you want to put it that way, like higher amounts, because He expects those people to be able to give it out as sadaqah. He says, look, all that extra amount that you're getting that's beyond your means, like you've taken care of your family and you've got everything you need, your house, your car, all that stuff, fine. You're going to have left over. Allah's saying your job is your wasila. You're a medium now. You're supposed to give it out to everybody else. You're supposed to be able to be taking care of your family or your friends or your community members or donating to the center, things like that. This is how Allah starts doing that. And then for everybody else, their test is to say, okay, I have to do what I have to do with that whatever little Allah is giving me, but I also remember that amount that Allah is giving me is exactly what I need to survive. Because He's the one who decided that. So He knows myself better than I do. So if He's only giving me 2 slices or 1 slice, I'm like, look, I might think I need more, but Allah knows better. So if I have that amount right now and I'm doing all my duties, then that's exactly what I deserve. And then maybe, hopefully, if this person decides to be generous like they need to be, then that's where you start to see them giving out extras and things like that. That's sort of the system that Allah has in place. That's why we have zakat and khums and sadaqah and all these other incentives where we're supposed to be, giving back and forth and redistributing wealth. That's the Islamic system. When it works beautifully. But when these people hoard wealth, when they hold on to it and don't give it out, then these people start struggling a lot more. And when these people also, they don't have sabr and patience and remember that Allah is the one in charge, then sometimes their akhlaq gets affected. Right? Like, think of an example. Think of now with somebody else, there's obviously, if you go down anywhere in these intersections, there's a lot of, homeless people on the side, or maybe not homeless, but people who are in need, and they're asking for money and food, stuff like that, right? So this person who has absolutely nothing, sometimes you're walking by these individuals, and, they ask, oh, do you have any spare change, or do you have anything? And then you might be like, no, sorry. And what if they snap back at you, like, no, you're a liar, I know you have something, and they start acting mean towards you. Immediately, you say, how dare they talk like that to me? Now, I'm never going to help him or anybody else again, because this is how these people are. So that bad akhlaq can have an effect on everything too. So the idea is, it's difficult obviously, but the individuals who have this sort of difficulty in their life need to have that sabr and patience and recognize that, God, I have trust in the system that you've created. I'm going to do all my duties, I'm going to work, I'm going to do whatever I have to, and whatever I need, I know you're going to provide. If I deserve more, you're going to give it to me. And if I deserve less, you're going to take it away from me too. So to kind of have that trust system in this is what justice is all about. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay. So clearly, if we're talking about putting things in the right place, then obviously then God can't be unjust because He is the one who created everything. He has knowledge over everything. So it's impossible for Him to put something in the wrong place, right? Yes or no? What do you think? Can God do something unjust based on this definition? Think about it. We'll continue tomorrow night and we'll say, look, sometimes people have knowledge. Sometimes they know what they're doing, but they can still be unjust. Even if God has all this knowledge, is it still possible that He's unjust? Like, moreover, okay, He has all this knowledge, but still we see people who are homeless. Or what about natural disasters? Or people who are, dying overseas, or people who are starving. Like, is that really part of justice that this, some young newborn baby that dies in a hurricane, like how is that just? How is that God giving out what they deserve? Why would a baby be punished like that? Or again, we talk about the Ahlul Bayt. Why were they punished so much? Why did they have to go through so much oppression in their lives? They did everything right. Why did they get that? And like we said before too, all of these Zalimeen from now and from all of history, why are they get everything good? And I think one of you had mentioned it a little bit. I think Amir, you talked about it the other night. But we'll open that up a little bit more of how do we understand why good things happen to bad people and bad things happen to good people? And actually whether those things are just or unjust or not. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay. Then we will see you all tomorrow night. Inshallah, continue this discussion. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu